So this year at Centers for Spiritual Living, we are talking about living out loud. Now, how many people grew up having people tell them, shh, be quiet? Me too. I would say that I grew up in a household where it was absolutely believed that children should be seen and not heard. Just a cultural value that was part of both of my parents' backgrounds, even though they came from very different cultures in that they were very much the same. And so it has, so that was something that I often struggled with as a kid, right? I, as Reverend Suzette mentioned before, I had a lot of questions. I wondered about a lot of things, but that was often seen as being a little too much, a little too inquisitive, a little too argumentative, a little too much feeling all the time. So I kind of started learning those lessons early, to be quiet, to hold it in. So as part of this theme this year of living out loud, this month we've been talking about cultivating authenticity. Now, authenticity is a powerful word, isn't it? It's a word that means being true to ourselves, cultivating, expressing who we really are. Has anybody wondered who they really are? Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm still working on that, right? And I think, again, that kind of comes back often to our childhood experience, doesn't it? Because no one really asks us who we are, or no one asked me who I was when I was a kid, right? They were telling me who I was, right? And who I should be, right? How to be good, how to behave well, how to be kind, hopefully, how to be tidy, how to embody the things that in the 1960s girls and young women were expected to embody. And so, you know, as a young person, you draw your conclusions, don't you, about who you are from how people behave around you and what they tell you. And I can share that one of the things that I drew, the conclusions that I drew as a young person, was I didn't seem to fit in very well. I wasn't really enough or too much. Either way, not working out. Brené Brown offers us a definition of authenticity. She says, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's a very powerful statement, isn't it? Letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. So let's talk a little bit about what that kind of project might look like. Because if we're letting go, what are we letting go of? We're letting go of ideas that someone else has given us, or we're letting go of ideas and conclusions we have drawn ourselves, right? And both of them might not really have very much to do with who we are. Or sometimes it's a little bit of both, right? There's a little bit of you in there, but maybe there's a little bit of something else. And it's not easy to discern and figure that out. But if we start thinking about this as a daily practice, as an opportunity to reflect, I think that we can find a roadmap to help find ourselves again, to discover that deeper level. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can do that. Why does this matter? Why is it important to cultivate authenticity? In our teaching, I think there are two really important reasons why we do this. One, because what we believe about ourselves, what we think about ourselves, plays a really powerful role in what we bring into our lives, in what we create in our lives. So if we feel that there is something wrong with us, or something less than, or something not enough, it is very likely that those are the kinds of experiences we're going to keep bringing into our life. The thing that confirms that less than, that not enough. Because we believe that what we think about, right, has power. Because we are part of this infinite creative mind. So we create our experience through our thoughts. And the other reason another reason, not the other reason, but perhaps another reason why this is important is also because the more that we live from that authentic place within ourselves, the more that we express our gifts and our talents, the more that we can contribute to creating a better world for all of us together. And so those are two very powerful reasons, I think. So there's no way to talk about authenticity, though, without talking about what some might call the elephant in the room. What could that be? Shame. Right? Can we be authentic if we feel shame? That gets in the way, doesn't it? Right? That feeling of shame, that is the feeling of not enough. It is the fear of being unlovable. It is the thought that we have to change something about ourselves or hide something about ourselves. And when we are hiding, we cannot be present. We cannot be living out loud, right? So it's really essential in order to be authentic for us to learn more about shame and what we think is shame, what we identify in ourselves as something to be ashamed about. So this is the really good thing. This is the great message of this morning. Your shame is your guide. Your shame can show you what you need to heal, what you need to learn to think about in a new way so that you can fully own and love and claim yourself. And that is part of the way that we start to learn that what we need in living is not approval from other people, but ultimately our own approval. And perhaps not even thinking about it in terms of approval. The title of the talk is No Approval Needed, because we don't need other people to tell us what is good about ourselves. But that's part of our journey, is to learn that, isn't it? So, Martin, next slide, please. Thank you. So in Science of Mind, it is one of our primary principles that we are spiritual beings and we're made in the image and likeness of whatever we're going to call God, spirit, source, divine mind, divine intelligence, the thing itself. We are individualizations of that one, expressions of that one. Carl Sagan famously said, we are made of star stuff, right? The cosmos is within us. And I always really loved that image for myself, right? When I close my eyes, that's the image that I see of myself. And I invite you to just take a moment and close your eyes and think of whatever image it is that embodies, that visualizes the divine for you. Whether it is stars, it is nature, it is the laughter of your children, the purr of your cat, the loving nudges of your dogs or other pets, anything that brings that sense of the divine, of love, of wholeness to you. Just take that in for a moment and connect to that. So we believe that God is the one life power and intelligence that is continuously expressing itself through us, through the seen and the unseen universe. And in the eternal past, right, Spirit chose to make us out of itself as a living being. Our very life is the life of God, and that means we are perfect, whole, and complete when we were created, when we arrive on the planet, exactly as we are. And that doesn't mean we look perfect according to some social standard, or that any aspect of our lives is perfect according to some other standard. It means that what is within us, exactly as we are, is wholeness. And so we use that word perfect in the sense of wholeness. We are whole exactly as we have arrived. And in a sense, it is our soul journey to come back to that knowledge. It's a mystery. We don't know why. We are born and we forgot it. It's our life journey to reconnect to that. And then as we learn and discover this truth about ourselves, to choose to live from that awareness and that understanding. And that's where free will comes in, doesn't it? It's the choice. It often doesn't feel like we have choice, but indeed we have the most amazing choice, because we have the choice to choose to know our divinity, and we have the choice to live from that divinity, and that is living authentically. So there's a quote that says, when you know your worth, no one can make you feel worthless. Right? Our worth is not dependent on what we have done. It is what we know about ourselves. Right? We live in a society that defines worth by how well you pick up your room, how well you do in school, what kind of a job you have and how much money you make, how good you look on the outside, or how much you spent on your car or your house, or any number of other external things. But we are saying something different. We are saying our worth comes from our essential nature as divine beings, and that is not contingent on anybody's approval. The only thing that matters is our knowing this ourselves. And knowing this, then choosing to live from it. So some of you have heard me speak before about an experience I had once at a CSL conference where I met a young minister who had grown up in science of mind. And he'd grown, in fact, not only his parents, but his grandparents also had been ministers. And he said at this conference, looking out at the crowd, he said, wow, I just don't know what it would be like not to have grown up in this, but I really envy all of you who didn't, because you have these great Lord of the Rings stories about how you came to science of mind, all of the travails and challenges and difficulties that you had, and you finally found this teaching and this amazing things happen. And he said, I just grew up in it knowing, yeah, I'm a child of God. Everything's great. I envy you. Now, of course, yes, I have my Lord of the Rings story. And I just was thinking, because so many times I thought, if only I had known that. If only I had known that when I was a kid. If only I had known that when I was 20 years old, or however old. How much easier would my life have been? And yet here was someone saying, it's great that you've had all these challenges, because now you can really appreciate this teaching. And how powerful is that, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about those journeys. Look. Can we go to the next slide? Ernest Holmes says, there is something within you beyond all doubt and fear, something which has never been limited by your acts or destroyed by your feeling. This is the only something that can make you whole. And that something, of course, is the spirit within you, and your awareness of it is what makes you whole. And that is really what healing is in our teaching. It is learning what makes you whole, is already there within you. So when we don't feel connected to this knowledge, we're vulnerable to shame. And of course, we've talked a little bit about shame. Shame is that feeling of not being enough. And shame needs three things to really get its hooks in us, doesn't it? Secrecy, silence, and judgment. Right? We don't want people to know what we feel ashamed about. I certainly didn't. And in that insight, right, is the power of knowing that it's all about thought. Our shame is a thought, right? Our fear of exposure is a thought. Our self-judgment is a thought. So all of those are things that we have the power to change, because we can change that thought, right? And part of what gives shame its greatest power is that we don't like to talk about it, right? We don't like to admit it to ourselves, and we certainly don't like to talk about it with people that are around us, because gosh, if they knew what we were ashamed about, what would happen? They'd pick on us, they'd judge us. That's right. Wow. So I was one of those kids whose every report card had the comment, needs to pay more attention. If she only paid more attention. And I was always behind. I was the queen of incompletes later in school, right? And I heard all the time the question, what is the matter with you? So, of course, what happened? I came to believe there was something the matter with me, something wrong with me. Boy, was I desperate for nobody else to know this. Now, of course, but I was still myself. So, things just, I didn't know why I didn't fit in. I didn't know what was the matter. I just kept trying to do my best and also trying to do my best to hide. I was a pretty good hider. In fact, I styled myself as a wallflower because that was the least dangerous place to be, right? If nobody could notice me, it seemed like less bad would happen. And of course the problem is that actually, as my husband commented when we very first met, you're kind of a ham, aren't you? He said to me. And so here was the truth. He saw me even when I was trying to hide. Right? Which was something very powerful. And I kind of realized, I don't know about this guy. It was a little scary that he saw me because I was trying so hard not to stand out in any way. And years later, I learned that, in fact, I have ADHD, which was some of the reason why I struggled to fit in a society that's not really designed for that. But the point of this is not to say I found a label for what made me different. The point of that was, for me, it was useful in learning new strategies to manage. But part of that journey was learning to appreciate those things in a new way and find new ways to think about them. So, for example, am I inattentive or thoughtful? Right? That, has to pay more attention. Am I impulsive or spontaneous? Am I distracted or observant? All of us have to navigate this for ourselves. But why I shared this was to say that for me, part of it was learning to see myself in a new way, to see those things that were inherent in me, indeed as perfect, as gifts that I might have to navigate in new ways, but were still absolutely part of my wholeness, right? So how do we bring light to this shadow? Can the next slide, please. Ernest Holmes, who, again, the founder of Science of Mind, said, you don't have to despise your personality or say, I hate this body, I'm a worm of the dust, I think you are surrendering to God. When you deny yourself, you deny God. All we have to say is, there is nothing in me but God. So just take a moment here and close your eyes and repeat to yourself, there is nothing in me but God. Okay. So knowing this now, when you encounter something you're feeling ashamed about, I just want to invite you to be curious about it, right? So there's no big exercise here. There's no self-judgment about, oh my God, I was ashamed and now I screwed up again. No, it's just be curious. What is that telling you? What is there to know more about there for you? And as you move into that, think about having conversations with people that you feel safe with. And the safest place, or one of the safest places, is right here at home. These are conversations you can have with practitioners, right? We have our practitioner in service today is Sylvia, and she's going to be available after the service to speak with you. And we have other practitioners who are also available that you can contact through our website, and that includes Sophia and Jody and Candace and Mary. We have a wonderful practitioner corps here. So practitioners are one very safe place to start exploring those things. Your friends, your partners, your therapist, lots of places. But I invite you to be curious with yourself first and then to start having a conversation to open that up. So let that light in, because when we begin those conversations, when we choose to step out of secrecy, right, then we can begin to recover that sense of connection to the divine and that sense of authenticity, of living from it. Next slide, please. So Prem Prakash says, our stresses, anxieties, pains, and problems arise because we do not see the world, others, or even ourselves as worthy of love. We do not see ourselves as worthy of love. Ernest Holmes says we should stop condemning ourselves because it is the worst condemnation there is. And when we stop condemning ourselves, the condemnation of others will not reach us. It's a pretty powerful idea, isn't it? When we stop, then no one else can hurt us. Right? We are allowing people to hurt us by hurting ourselves. So I want to share an interesting story about value and how we see ourselves. A well-known speaker started a seminar by holding up a $20 bill. And he asked the audience, who would like this $20 bill? And hands started going up. And he said, I'm going to give it to one of you, but first I'm going to do this. And he crumpled it up. And he said, now, who wants it? Who still wants it? All the hands stayed up. He said, what if I do this? And he dropped it on the ground and he ground it down with his heel. All right. Do you still want it? Everybody's hands still up. He picked it up and he tore it a little bit. Do you still want it? Everybody's hands still up. The speaker said, I've just taught you a very important lesson. No matter what I did to this money, you still wanted it because it never lost its worth. It was still a $20 bill, right? There are so many times in life, aren't there, where we feel crumpled up, we feel ground down, even a little torn, and we don't feel our value anymore, do we? And yet, a piece of paper that someone has stamped with ink and a number, we still see as having value. What would it be like if we saw ourselves that way? In fact, not only as valuable as a $20 bill, infinitely more valuable than a $20 bill, right? Because we are made of star stuff and the cosmos is within us. So much more than a $20 bill. So we are worthy, are we not? Are you ready to claim your value? I want to hear it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, next slide, please. So I want to invite you, we're going to kind of conclude with a very quick process here. I just want to invite you to take a moment to think about how you can increase the value you give yourself. So just go into mind reflection and name 3 skills or talents to yourself that you have. Something that you are contributing to the world. And if you're struggling getting to 3, just think of a few things that you're grateful for. All right. And now I want to invite you to just speak to whoever's sitting next to you, and you have a choice. share with them one of those things, or if you prefer, just what it felt like to think about that. We're just going to do that for a quick moment. For those of you online, you can journal it, write it down. If you're on Zoom, you can put it in the chat. If you're joining us later, this is something you can share with yourself. So thank you so much for joining that. I appreciate that. I know we'd all love to share more, but we're going to kind of keep going with our service. So I just want to invite you to kind of bring your attention back for a moment as we conclude this morning. So I hope that you have had an opportunity this morning to reflect on your value, to affirm it to yourself, and to recognize that that value is really that value that we are all born with. We are all perfect, whole, and complete expressions of spirit. When I look at each of you, that is what I see and what I know. And what's even more wonderful is that it's expressed in such a perfectly unique way, right? With amazing individual gifts. Knowing our worthiness is a choice. Whatever has happened in our lives up until now is something we can choose to learn from, and we can choose to release all of the beliefs that do not serve us, all of the false thoughts or conclusions that really are not the truth of who we are. Embrace your gifts, embrace that love that is within you, that is the divine. And together, we can spread that light farther and farther.
And so let's again return to our basic proposition. We are surrounded by a law of mind. It is a creative law. It responds to our thinking exactly as we think. And through careful practice, gradually we can weed out all negative thoughts, and we can replace them with positive ones. So the whole matter is simplified, and finally we come to realize that we are dealing only with our own thoughts, while our thoughts in their turn are acted on by the power greater than we are. It is wonderful to know that we do not have to coerce this power. It is always there, always ready, always able and willing to respond. But it is impossible for it to respond to us in any other way than by corresponding to our thinking. It is indeed like a mirror reflecting back our thoughts to us. We do the thinking, the mirror does the reflecting. If we want the picture in the mirror to change, we change the image in front of it. And so it is with our thoughts.